All right, everybody, we got the engine in, we got the transmission in. Now it's time to start on the wiring. As I went over in a previous video, I went ahead and routed my my Holley harness here. We're not really covering hooking up the Holley today. What we're going to do instead is go through this factory harness and cut it down to about 6 or 7 wires tops. So here's the thing. I've been going over this video in my head for probably a couple weeks now. I really would like to do a step-by-step video where I show anybody who's doing, you know, like a LS swap on a 3rd gen Camaro or Firebird, where I show you guys everything to remove, what you need to keep, you know, what wires you need to depin, all that jazz. That's just not going to be possible, guys, because the fact of the matter is there are too many variables for me to do that. I'm going to explain myself. We'll start off with number 1, and number 1 is GM literally pinned. It's like every single one of these cars different, and I don't mean like every car, individual car different. What I mean is there are different pinouts for the V6 models, for the TBI models, for the TPI models, for the carbureted models, and then even within that, from year to year, things change. I mean, it's just it's really a nightmare to try to sit down and do the logistics to try to make a step-by-step video. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last few weeks. Like, I grabbed all these pinouts for the, you know, 87 through 88 and the 90 through 92 and the 82 through, you get the picture. I grabbed all these pinouts and I'm like, maybe I can do, no guys, if I did a video showing you how to pin it, I would literally need like 10 different harnesses to try to cover that for everybody. So instead, what I've decided to do is I'm just going to kind of explain what you need to do. I'm going to explain where you can get the pinouts or how you can get the pinouts, Google, to do all this. And this video is going to be more about how I'm doing mine. Mine is a 90 model, which means the pinouts for a 90 through 92 V6 model would be what I'm using. So if you've got a 90 through 92 V6 is what you're starting with, then you could do something similar. But even within that, again, the variables are just too great. I mean, it all depends on what you want to keep, what you want to get rid of. In my case, this is more of a race car build, so I'm going to be doing away with a lot of stuff that you would want to keep on more of a street-oriented build. But at the same time, I'm going to be keeping a few things that normally you would do away with on a full-out race car build, such as the heater, the wiring for the factory gauges, things like that. Now that I've kind of explained why I can't just do a step-by-step, I'm going to start off with this, guys. Here's something you need right here. What I have here are the pinouts for my particular vehicle. This is for the C100 harness, which is what I have laying in the floor here. And then this is for the C207 harness, which is connected to the C100 harness, but is also inside the vehicle, up under where the PCM, the factory ECU, was. Now, where can you get one of these pinouts for your individual vehicle? Google. Literally, guys. All you have to do is go into Google and type in the year model of your Camaro C100 harness, or what is it, C207? Yeah, C207 harness. I like to put the search on images in Google, and it'll pull up all these different ones. I was able to find a ton of them. thirdgen.org is also a good place to find this stuff. As a matter of fact, when you do your Google search, 80% of the time, it's going to end up taking you back to thirdgen.org anyway, because there's a lot of people on there that have done this hundreds of times. And one person was even kind enough to make this. And what they did here is they pretty much made a list of everything that you would normally want to keep. your fan relays, your brake sensor, your fuel pump relays, your power distribution block, you know, all this stuff. They made a list of it for the 90 through 92 C100 pin, and it's got the pin numbers right here. Those will be covered in your diagrams when you download them. As you can see, I only have about 5 wires that I have highlighted that I plan to keep. This includes my temperature sender for my gauges, my oil pressure switch for my gauges, the tack lead for my gauge, the starter solenoid wire, which is the big thick purple wire. And even though I haven't highlighted it, I'm probably going to be keeping a couple of these ignition hots, and of course I'm going to be keeping all of these 12-volt battery hots here. In my particular application, I am not going to be using the fuel pump relay. And that is simply because the Holley HP harness already has a fuel pump relay in it. So basically all I'm going to be using, I believe, is the gray wire from G4. I'm thinking that may be, let's see here, fuel pump relay splice. I'm going to have to go over it, but I believe the gray wire is the wire that comes back out to tell the fuel pump to kick on. I'm going to be wiring that in. Whenever I figure out which wire ultimately goes back to the fuel pump, that's the wire I'll be tying into the Holley harness. I'm going to figure that out. Once I strip the loom off this harness, I can kind of trace the wires, and I can figure out which one is the trigger wire on the relays and which one is not. And that brings me to another thing, guys. Again, different cars are, you know, have different layouts. And as an example, my car, on the firewall on the driver's side, you had 3 relays. You had a fan relay, you had a fuel pump relay, which is pretty common, and then I had the AC relay. On some models, this is, I think, like a MAF sensor relay or something like that. They're all different, guys. GM pinned all these cars different. So again, that's just another reason why I can't do like a step-by-step. But now that I've kind of explained what I'm doing, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to strip all the loom off this wire. And what I suggest doing first is going through, and this is actually a good thing to do as you're taking the wire harness off the car before you do your swap. Go through and label the things that you know you're going to want to reuse. Like if you're keeping the factory gauges, your your oil pressure sending unit, your temperature sending unit, your tack lead. If you go ahead and label that with some tape now, as you can see I've done with these relays and a few other things there. If you go ahead and label that stuff ahead of time, then it's going to make it way easier, because what I'm going to do now, I'm going to strip this loom back and I'm going to start pulling back and probably taping up into a ball everything that I'm going to keep on this harness. So I changed my strategy a little bit, and instead of trying to trace the stuff I'd already labeled, what I did is I used my little pinout diagram, and I went through here and basically I just put a piece of red tape on every wire that I needed to keep. So we started off with that huge harness, and this is all we got left, guys. Coming out of the C100 connector, that took me about 20 minutes to pull all that. Some of this is going to get cut off as well. Like this is the old alternator plug. I'm going to be cutting that off right there. And it was using the alternator to trigger the fan relay. So I got all that out. So that's all I need out of this. Now, if you are keeping your fan relay, your fuel pump relay, then you're going to have a little more work to do, because you're going to have to fish all that out of here. I'm actually going to fish the fan relay wiring out of the rest of this harness, because I am going to use that relay. I'm going to relocate it. That was over there on the driver's side firewall, and I'm going to put it right up here on the core support right next to the fan. So I'm going to use the factory relay for that. But as far as the fuel pump relay, we're doing a battery relocation to the back of the car. So I'm just gonna use a like a new weatherproof relay for the fuel pump back there. Actually, later on down the road, we're gonna be switching to dual or even triple 525 pumps. So I'll probably use 2 relays so I can double up the wire gauge and make sure it's got plenty of juice. But we don't need to talk about that in this video. Main thing is, like I said, that's all that's left, guys, out of that huge harness. Now, again, if you're planning to keep the factory relays, you're going to have to fish that out too. In addition, I do have a speed sensor in here that I have to fish out because I'm going to get the factory speedometer working. So I'm going to have to fish that out, and that's pretty much the only wire I need to go back into the car. So I'm pretty sure it's one of these wires. Yeah. Right here is the fuse for the fan relay, and that wire goes all the way to the fan relay. So like I said, I'm going to fish that out. This distribution block I'm probably going to use. Of course, the fan plug. So yeah, for me, guys, all I've got to do as far as the outside engine harness, all I have left to do now is fish out the wiring for that fan relay. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back. One thing I forgot to mention, guys, in addition to my fan relay, which this is the wiring for the fan relay right here, I forgot to mention also I'm going to need this. On most race cars, race car setups, this wouldn't be a big deal, but this is the power and ground for the heater fan up here. So the green wire here, that's for AC. I believe I'm going to be pulling that pin out, but I just need this block plug here with the power and the ground. Now I can get back to fishing it out. You can see when we're done here, like, we are going to have just a huge cluster of wires that are not going to be used. So this is all the old engine wiring for the V6. So none of that's going to get reused. Okay, quick little update. These are all the wires that I'm not using. This huge pile right here. This is the connector, the bulkhead connector, that goes through the inside of the car right here. Now, what a lot of people recommend online is they will tell you to just cut all the wires on both sides, and then you can kind of drill the middle out or mill the middle out. There's like an epoxy in here, guys, so it's going to be kind of hard to get out, but I'm sure it can be gotten out. But anyway, then you can still use this as a pass-through. I'm probably not going to do that because that would require me to depin all the Holley plugs probably to get it through there. Now, if I can get this thing apart where it clips together and clean it out where I can clip it over the Holley harness, then I may still use it. But we'll kind of go over that when I do the Holley install. But anyway, this is all the crap I got rid of, and this is all I kept. So this is my main C100 harness, and I've got, I think, about 7 wires coming out of it now. The wires I have tied over to the side, I have to depin and pull out. That stuff that I'm not using. Then over here, this is the 207 plug that goes under the dash. Now, to my knowledge, this single red wire right here, and I could be wrong, I'm going to have to research it, but I believe this is the only wire I'm going to be using. Like all the rest of these, I'm going to be pulling out. At that point, I may not even use this plug. To my knowledge, if I'm understanding correctly, when I traced this wire, it went back to the ECU plug, and it's labeled as vehicle speed. So what I think is going on is the speed sensor goes into the ECU, or this is how it went from the factory. It went into the ECU. The ECU converted the signal and sent it out to this plug. I know on earlier models there was a separate signal converter. but on the 89 or 90 and ups, there's no speedometer signal converter. The ECU does it. So I think it goes out to this plug. This plug plugs into the harness in the dash, and I believe that's what goes over to the speedometer to give me, you know, to give it the, I think it's 4,000 pulse per mile signal for the speedometer to work. So I'm actually going to be running both the speedometer and the tachometer. Since I have a 6-cylinder tach in there, I'm going to be running them both through a converter, because the Holley, unlike the factory GM PCMs, the Holley is not capable of converting the tach signal to a 6-cylinder tach or a 4-cylinder tach, or, you know, whatever. So I'm going to have to buy one of those Dakota Digital boxes. They're only about $100, but they allow you to convert both the speedometer and the tach signal. So that's what I want to be using to get the factory gauges going. For the time being, I'm probably not going to worry about the speedometer. And I've got a monster tach that I'm going to hook up, you know, to use as a tach, because the factory tach isn't very accurate anyway. And, you know, this is going to be a manual only turbo 350 car, so I'm going to be doing the shifting myself. Need a good tach reading. I want to throw a note in here, guys. I have seen people online doing swaps with factory PCMs, doing LS swaps, and still buying that Dakota Digital box. You don't need that, guys. Okay? You can go into the factory, like P59, P01, or some people call them 0411 PCMs. You can go in there, you can convert both the speed sensor and the tach signal to work with your factory tach and your factory speedometer. So if you're swapping, again, if you're doing an LS swap and you're swapping in a you know, you're using like a PSI harness or whatever and using a factory GM PCM, you don't need a converter box, guys. Your tuner, if you don't have HP tuners, your tuner can set that up for you. If you do have HP tuners, I actually have videos showing you how to do all that already. Now, the only other thing I have is this bundle right here, and this looks like a mess, but it's going to be cleaned up a lot. And guys, all this is, it's a power distribution block, which we will most likely not need. It's the relay connector for our cooling fan, the fuse for our cooling fan, the connector for our cooling fan, and the connector for our fan motor. I will be pulling this blue wire out. Not going to need that. All we need is the power and ground. Now, this looks like a cluster, but when I'm done, I'm going to be shortening all these wires, because I'm not going to need all this length, because the fan wire will no longer have to go from the firewall all the way around to here. That fan wire, the black and red wire that actually goes to the fan from the relay is going to be mounted right in here. So that wire is only going to be like a foot long now. And instead of a distribution block, we're going to have our lug, which this will probably be the next video, guys. We'll be doing our battery relocation to the back of the car, but we're going to have a power lug here under this heater box that's, you know, going to be tying all of our battery hots together. So yeah, I mean, the wiring that used to go to that relay, the reason it's so long and it looks like a mess is because it went all the way around the engine bay. Now it's just going to go from here to there. And the long ass wire that was going all the way from here up to here for the heater fan is now going to be going like from there to there. So yeah, we're going to be cutting a lot of that out. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to plug my C100 connector back into the firewall, and I'm going to kind of flop the wires over, figure out where everything needs to go. And I'm going to be shortening the wires for the like the oil pump wire, or I mean the oil switch wire that gives us our oil pressure reading. That thing's about 80 feet long, and it's literally got to go from here down to the bottom of the engine here. So we're going to be shortening it. The water temp sensor wire, you know, it's several, I don't know how long it is, several feet long. But all it has to do is go across the engine and hook up to our factory sending unit right here. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to just go through, shorten all these wires the way they need to be, and I'll be right back. The entire C100 harness is routed with just a couple exceptions. So we've got it coming out here. I'm looping it over here. Now I haven't loomed, I haven't taped and loomed everything yet, so that's why you're seeing bare wires. But this goes down. The oil pressure wire splits off here and goes down. I still have to put the connector on the end of that. The rest of it goes behind the engine and goes down here. Right here, the water temp sensor splits off. I've got to put the end on that, but that goes right there. This is the factory sending unit out of the V6 that we pulled out of here. Once again, in another video, we drilled and tapped the head for a 3/8, so that would screw in. So this goes down. Now all the wires that used to attach to the starter are now going to attach to this lug. This lug is going to be mounted up here, right up here, in a future video when we do the battery relocation. But that goes there. Then we'll have a huge starter wire that comes off, you know, for battery power to the starter. Then right here is the ignition wire that goes to the starter solenoid. This is an extra ignition hot that I've not decided if I'm going to keep yet or not. That's part of the reason I haven't loomed everything up. Now, on up here, obviously everything isn't plugged in because the motor's not in here, the resistor's not in here, but this is the plug for the motor. This is the plug for the resistor. This we're going to be taking out of this AC loom. This is just for the air conditioning, which we're not going to be running air conditioning, so we're going to be removing this, and that blue wire goes up, and we're going to be removing the blue wire from here, and I believe the green wire from here as well. Don't need any of that. This wire up here is actually going to go to our Holley harness. We're going to cover that in another video. This is the tack wire to the factory tack. That's also going to go to the Holley. We'll cover that in another video as well. Now, what I said about rerouting the fans, guys, I cut, I bet, 6 feet of fan wire, just like I said I would. I cut all kinds of fan wire out. Previously, the fan relay was over there on the firewall, and the wires had to run all the way around, you know, like I'd said earlier, to a distribution block. Well, I repurposed all kinds of stuff. This is the cooling fan relay that was originally over there. So I moved it over here, you know, trimmed the wires to just go there. Used to, they had to go all the way around the engine, so they were like 6-7 feet long. Same with the power wire. I trimmed it. This is our distribution block that used to be mounted right here where this relay is now. I put it here. I wanted to keep all of these fusible links in here, and I retained the factory fuse. So we've got power coming from our battery lug over to the fuse, out of the fuse to the distribution block, and then just like the factory had it, we've got a leg going to our cooling fan relay and another leg going over, and that's actually for our fan motor. So you can see that cleaned up a whole lot of wiring. Oh yeah, and then here's our leg. This is our cooling fan, our cooling fan. This is the activation wire. This will get tied into one of the Holley auxiliary outputs. So that's not done in this video. We still have to do the full Holley install. It's just laying there where I mocked it up the other day. But that's pretty much it, guys. That's, you know, that's the wire harness, the C100 wire harness sorted, and this is everything that was left. So you can see I didn't use a whole lot. Now, once again, if you're keeping things like AC, if you're going to use the factory fuel pump circuit, things like that, you're going to have to go through and pull a little more out of this, but you're still going to have quite a bit left over. This really wasn't a big deal, guys. I mean, it took me maybe a total of 30-40 minutes to get all the wiring I needed out, and I've been out here for a couple hours now, but most of that time has been spent running the wire, recrimping wires, etc., etc. So not a very big job. You just need to download the wire diagrams. Like I said, you can Google whatever year your Camaro is, you know, C100 and C207 pinouts, and like I said, I still haven't done anything with the 207. I believe the only wire I need with that is the actual speedometer wire. We got this done now. Next thing on the agenda is I'm gonna have to decide, guys, because I don't know if I want to do the Holley hookup first or do the battery relocation, but one of them's gonna be done in the next video. So once again, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate all your support. If you don't mind, click the thumbs up button on this video. Now get out in the garage, get something done, and I'll see you next time here on Bad Luck Garage.